Everyone, just waiting for the live stream to start. I think it has. So if you're watching this video almost as a VOD, apologies about the, I guess, introduction. Not the same as a usual YouTube video, but felt like after a long work week that after a cup of coffee at around 7:30 p.m. that I'd prepare a video on what I thought the landscape would be in terms of chip strategy for most managers and things like that. So thank you anyone who's watching now. If you're watching in the morning, trying to kind of catch up and make sense of all the information. I think what I'll do is try to distill the information and then kind of give you my thoughts in terms of chip strategy and things like that. So the news that actually came out today is that the Carabao Cup impacting games, which would mean when the final actually occurs, which is around game week 29, what we traditionally would have expected is that any of the finalists would not play in game week 29. Therefore, it creates a blank on 29 that we usually would have expected for these fixtures that would blank in 29 to be played instead in 33. But the announcement that was actually created by the Premier League today has actually pushed effectively, I guess, 3 out of 4 of the potential games to be played on double game week 25. Of course, there's only 2 potential games that could potentially be doubles in 25 because you only have 2 finalists in the Carabao Cup. So the percentages that you see on the screen now is the percentage chance of things happening in double game week 25 in terms of fixtures. And as you can see, the Fulham versus Tottenham game and the Villa versus Liverpool game, that is either or. So it's going to be binary in the end. We will see this game being played out after the GW24 deadline. And that is the Carabao Cup second leg, where Spurs are currently leading 1-0, but they will be heading towards Anfield. Therefore, the percentage chance as per markets that Liverpool will actually progress towards the finals is actually a staggering 71%, despite actually being down on aggregate. Whereas Newcastle, as we know, have a 2-0 lead, and they got that in the Emirates, which means that they will be going back home to St. James Park to play that Carabao Cup second leg. And therefore, the percentage chance that Arsenal progresses to the Carabao Cup final and that creates a double game week 25 is only a 15% chance. So quite interesting, of course, that the maximum amount of double game week fixtures we get in 25 is 2, but in reality, I think we are more likely only going to get 1, because I think it's also very likely, given the 85% chance that Newcastle will beat Arsenal in the Carabao Cup second leg, will mean that Newcastle instead have their fixture move towards game week 33. And that is going to be another massive double game week this season. So that's kind of the breakdown here. So the impact of this is we now have a double game week 25 no matter what. So if Tottenham win, for example, that 29% chance that it can happen, that they actually go to Anfield and maybe secure an aggregate lead. If that happens, then we have a Fulham versus Tottenham double game week 25, which is absolutely mental because Fulham have really an already great fixture, right? They already have Fulham versus Nottingham Forest in game week 25. And so this is why a lot of people have been pressing the assistant manager chip, including myself. So that's double game week 25 news. Now, this graphic I've used, it comes from johnnyc.bsky.social. So Johnny C is the artist formerly known as FPL Spaceman. I'm sure he would still be called that, but lovely guy. Does a lot of great fixture graphics and detailed breakdowns, even threads on Blue Sky. So if you want to, and you use Blue Sky, give him a follow. He always provides a lot of detail to us. I think he also jumped on FPL Optimize, the podcast, to discuss his opinions on the sort of fixture managing aspect of this season and how we should plan towards that. Now, the surprise news of double game week 25, I think, was definitely something that has blindsided most of us, mostly because of that Villa and Liverpool double being moved there provisionally on 25. Historically, we would have only expected maybe just the Fulham one to happen, and most fixture planners had only expected Fulham versus Tottenham to potentially be moved there because of Tottenham being involved in so many cups. The impact of this, though, is you can see the expected number of fixtures. So that gray row at the bottom, this is a pretty complex graphic, but that gray row at the bottom does detail right now based on our understanding of, first of all, the FA Cup, because FA Cup future fixtures will create blanks and doubles in the future, whereas the Carabao Cup will only really impact 29, 25, and 33. So that's kind of the understanding. So the expected number of fixtures is, of course, we have a double game week in 25, therefore 11.15. As I said, these will become binary after cup outcomes take place, but we kind of have a good understanding of what the fixtures are like. Then we have a blank in game week 29. We then have a major double and the biggest double this season in game week 33, because it's very likely a lot of the fixtures will be put there instead. And then a blank game week in 34. So this kind of chip strategy piece in terms of whether we free hit 29 and 3 at 34 is still quite relevant to this day, because I think if you plan to, let's say, free at 29, there's a pretty high chance that we still have Liverpool and Newcastle blanking there, as you can see on the kind of graphic on the screen. And a lot of us are invested into Newcastle and Liverpool for a very good reason. And so that free at 29 piece is quite strong. And the reason why that's quite strong is because, yeah, you now have a slightly weaker slate to past game week 29. And that also probably means maybe less of a need to potentially free out in 34. But as you can see, it is now looking to be quite a big blank as well, generally speaking. And then double game week 36, that's a pretty big double, but not nearly as large as 33. So the big question is, we only have a few chips in FPL, and we only have a few game weeks to use them. There's a small chance in terms of game week 37 of blanks, but I think that's a little bit too far out to really discuss right now. That is impacted by a lot of the FA Cup games, and I can't really speak to that at this moment, because it's just we would rather have some more FA Cup outcomes before we discuss this. But I think crucially, when we look at the doubles, you've got a double in 25, a double in 33, and a double in 36. The chips that you mostly use on doubles would be the triple captain chip, now the new assistant manager chip, and then also the bench boost. So the biggest bench boost this season is looking like game week 33. And then I would say that kind of leaves you with an opportunity to assistant manager around 25 and also around 36. You can obviously double game week in 24, and you can start using the assistant manager in 24. That's besides the point. We already know the fixture slate in double game week 24. But if you double game week 24 assistant manager, then you of course get double game week 25 as well as part of it. So that's kind of the big talking point as to why a lot of people are now interested in assistant managing in 24, because you'd get the 25 double. Nowhere else in the season is there going to be a 3-week fixture piece, I suppose, where you can actually have doubles. And the only alternative, I suppose, is from a chip strategy point of view, if you think about it, is if you triple captain on 24 and you assistant manager on 25, you still kind of capture the impact of this assistant manager slate. We might have better or worse assistant manager usage in 25, depending on the outcomes of the Carabao Cup game. So I think one of the tougher things about triple captaining now is, yes, you guarantee Salah with the double, which I think is very, very significant, but you also might have a weaker assistant manager usage if you do it from 25 to 27. And right now it's looking like Emery's very strong. I would say that Silva can also become extremely overpowered as long as Spurs actually, do the unobvious, which would be to maybe secure a result at Anfield. And then the standard play that I'm seeing now is going to be assistant manager 24 and then triple captain 36. So this graphic is actually a little bit wrong. Apologies about that. So I would say if I was able to fix this in time, I would suggest, this would be a triple captain 36. Sorry, this is all live, so unfortunately I can't edit this out, but we will manage. Let's see. So hopefully that fixes that, or not. Maybe it's just ruined forever. Probably has been. But yeah, I think assistant manager 24, triple captain 36 is the alternative because of the double there, and you probably are minded to bench boost. You could also triple captain in 33, but you only really have 2 other alternative fixtures to get a triple captain from a doubler. You could obviously just triple captain at the end of the season as well, right? If you think it's the least powerful chip, you can also save it for then. Generally speaking, a lot of people have also kind of used their triple captains, and so the default option right now, I would say, is you're left towards using assistant manager 24. So that's kind of my interpretation of the chip strategies, right? If you've got triple captain, you generally have the opportunity to consider assistant managing on 25 instead. Whereas if you have the assistant manager now, I would still mostly likely use it, and then triple captain is a bit flexible. So triple captain on that sort of second line there, you can use it wherever you really want, on a double most likely, 33 or 36. And then, right now I think it makes sense very much for most managers to go assistant manager 24. The alternative, I suppose, if you don't really want to seek the value of the double-double, the Assistant Manager 24, because you're seeing so many managers go for this chip and you want to go for a different line of strategy, I think that's still viable from a sort of risk strategy perspective. But I think the biggest talking point is actually who to actually use the Assistant Manager 24 on. And I think that is going to kind of go towards our next section. So the next section that I prepared is sort of looking at Assistant Manager chip points from Gaming 24 to 26, right? Because if I'm saying that Assistant Manager 24 looks very strong, how do we plan to play Assistant Manager 24? The most standard play, I think, is if you have double Liverpool right now, it's so simple. If you have 1.5 in the bank, or at least you can make one free transfer right now to leave you with 1.5 million in the bank, that you just immediately go to Ani Slot as the Assistant Manager. As you can see with this sort of graphic here produced by 11ify, you can find him on 11ify.com. He has his own team model, his own predictions of Premier League games, and I think they've proved to be very strong this season and have even outperformed markets. So this is a really good simulation of what the chips will look like provisionally for 24 to 25 to 26 in terms of expected points. Now, clearly, outcomes in the Premier League are pretty crazy, so you'll have to manage that as they come. But as you can see, Slot is probably the projected best assistant manager right now as things stand, based on the current probabilities of fixtures happening, right? We might crystallize on, let's say, Marco Silva being a better manager, and we might even crystallize on Emery being a better manager, but it's more likely right now that the double of Slot is just very, very good. When you consider that, you probably don't have to use a free transfer moving from one manager to the next. So that's Slot. The big thing on 26, though, is that Slot isn't a very good manager on 26. So if you go for, let's say, Slot 24, 25, you then just basically move towards Arteta or maybe Ruud van Nistelrooy on 26. Whoever else has games, or a good game rather, based on the table bonus or I guess that overdog strength impact, like for example Iraola on 26 as well. He just simply has a really good fixture, an opportunity to really beat down on an opponent, and look, that's kind of the value of the Slot chip, right? You're not looking for table bonus, you're looking for Liverpool to play like they have been all this season long and play like the best team in the league by far. The alternative is if you have triple Liverpool, or you, and I'll talk about maybe like some of the extenuating circumstances, because I think going back to the Slot chip, if you actually have maybe 3 to 5 free transfers and you already have triple Liverpool, you could still actually use a free transfer to go out of one of your Liverpool players, like going out of Gakpo now, or going out of Trent arguably, or even let's say an Alisson if you actually have a secondary goalkeeper who is likely to play in Game Week 29. If you actually have the capacity to move into Slot without that being a major cost in terms of the amount of free transfers you have, that can be quite strong, right? Moving out of triple Liverpool to go back into Slot. But if you have to take hits to go into Slot, and you have to take out a third Liverpool player in your team, I still think it actually makes more sense to go into Moyes instead on Game Week 24 for that double. As you can see, the projected points for Moyes is a little bit behind Slot. And however, you need to calculate the opportunity cost of not having a triple Liverpool player, because it's very likely, even if you replace the Liverpool player with another doubler, there is a gap in terms of what that creates going forward, right? Because if Liverpool doubled twice, the player that you sell from Liverpool is unlikely going to double also on Game Week 25. So say I go Trent to Mykolenko and I give that to enable myself to go into Slot, I'm suddenly, with Mykolenko on 25 as opposed to Trent on 25. So that's quite significant. Whereas if you go on AM's Moyes on 24, you will still have a doubling assistant manager if you move into the Villa manager in Emery or Marco Silva. The reason why Emery and Marco Silva are here is because this is purely dependent on the outcome of that Carabao Cup game, which we will find out by Game Week 25. That game will have culminated. If Spurs progress to the final, you go to Marco Silva. That's a very easy move. The crucial thing about Marco Silva is he costs 1.1 million, whereas Emery costs 0.8. So this is a cheap route, right, in terms of the managers that you can get to. So if you're somehow extremely frugal right now of cash and you don't have much money and you're not going to spend 1.5 on the manager somehow, even though I think, look, from an assistant manager point of view, look at the amount of expected points that these managers are getting. There's absolutely no reason why you should cheap out on managers if you want to. I would be cheaping out on players right now. I would not be cheaping out on managers. So yes, on Game Week 26, you might maybe be blocked from Arteta, but I think that's not the worst thing in the world. You will still have plenty of other managers who are cheaper than Arteta, and still, for example, within the price range of Marco Silva, for you to be able to make use of, let's say, going Moyes to a Villa or Fulham manager. And the reason why the question mark is on 26 is because the table can move a lot, and ultimately I still think it's worth the free transfer on 26 to actually make that free transfer of use and then maximize that from a chip strategy point of view. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I've unfortunately deleted one of my previous graphics, so I've left the unbutchered, I suppose, triple captain 36 graphic here. But I think the last thing that I really wanted to look at today was one more thing. Let me just try and pull that up right now. It would be the absolute GOAT. So this would be Ben Crellin's chip strategy schedule. Not even a chip strategy schedule, it's just the fixture schedule. But I think what's most important right now from a chip strategy point of view, now obviously give Ben Crellin a follow. I'm sure all of you already follow Ben Crellin, but crucially, I think when you look at the full fixture slate, the thing to navigate right now is whether you start to lock into potentially a free hit strategy, because you now have much more certainty around, you know, the fixtures leading up to 33, and you now also have the idea that you want to save free transfers, because with double give me 25, one of the things that is being thrown up right now, going back to these kind of probabilities at the very start, is if you have, let's say, Fulham getting a double in give me 25, what that creates as an impact is you probably might have to be using free transfers into Spurs players or even Fulham players in give me 25, and that can drastically change your transfer strategy. So one thing that I'll mention now is that, yes, it makes a lot of sense traditionally to always use free transfers towards the doublers, and that would be classically Everton players, etc. But this is a good window as well to also save up some free transfers. If you already are going to use your system manager chip, right, which doesn't cost a free transfer this week, it will cost free transfers in subsequent weeks if you change your manager. You can actually benefit from just simply looking at the landscape and then trying to be flexible, because saving free transfers, and suddenly if let's say Tottenham do something extremely unexpected, you might need to, for example, move away from slot on 24, right? So if you deal with the bad probabilities, like Arsenal, they could suddenly make a massive comeback and somehow land themselves with a double in game 25. That could happen, right? We could live in a world where Chelsea and Arsenal double and Fulham and Tottenham double. And I think saving free transfers can also help you, because there's a small probability that that can happen. Alternatively, of course, this is an opportunity to invest more heavily into, let's say, Liverpool and Aston Villa, because you might expect that they double, and you think that it's very unlikely that those respective teams, like let's say Arsenal or rather Newcastle and Liverpool, will actually lose in the Carabao Cup second leg. But one of the things that I think probabilities, you know, let us know is that just means that there is a reality where you can be quite screwed. And I myself am in that exact situation right now, where because I went for Alisson and DCL a week back, I've kind of closed myself off from slot. I've also forced myself into a transfer from DCL to NDIA, and then the Premier League have surprised me completely by dropping an absolute bomb when it comes to FPL. So that's one thing I wanted to mention right now. But this is kind of the video segment over. If you're watching this video on replay, you know, thank you so much for listening to me waffle for about 19 minutes. I'll just jump into basically doing a bit of a chat Q&A right now. And once again, shout out to Johnny C from Blue Sky for creating this wonderful graphic. All right, so starting from the top here. Thank you guys so much for joining on the stream. What would you do if you've got triple Liverpool? I think I explained that at one point in the video. I think it comes down to how many free transfers you have. I would just go for slot if you have 3 to 5 free transfers. If you have less than that and it's tricky to go slot for yourself, I would actually just go for Moyes instead. Other questions from Marvin in the chat. Been really busy with work. Appreciate you tuning in, Marvin, sorry. No triple captain this week. I mean, I am not triple captaining this week, but I did mention actually from a chip strategy point of view that it does make sense to me that you could be going for this strategy in terms of line number 1 here by just triple captaining on 24 and assistant managing at 25. The free hit I still think can be sort of manipulated around 29, 34 because it also really depends on some of the outcomes on 24 in the Carabao Cup, right? That can still change our free hit strategy template because, you know, crazy things can happen. So generally speaking, I think most people would prefer that second line. And the triple captain, I think, is quite flexible on it. But if you have triple captain and you already plan on using it, and let's say you have got 0. For example, some managers right now will have 0.0 in the bank or 0.2 in the bank. That means you can't very easily go into an assistant manager. In that case, if you still have the triple captain left, I think you can just triple captain this week, and then you can use your free transfer next week to then actually give you the money to go for assistant manager 25, and that can actually save you from actually, you know, forcing a hit on yourself, which I think is quite significant. I myself, I will actually do a little bit of a team reveal, sorry, at the end of the video, but I can tell you right now that I am going to be taking a hit this week in FPL, but that's simply because, you know, my planning did not go to plan and things happen. What can I say? Someone wants to bring in Rodgers in 25. I think one of the tricky things with Rodgers, though, is you're still dealing with that. The Bournemouth midfielders, generally speaking, have much better fixtures. And the only addition of the game for Rodgers is actually playing versus Liverpool. And even though that's a home game for Aston Villa, it's not a great game of football, is it? So that's something that I'd like to basically point out, that I don't think Rodgers is suddenly amazing. I think Watkins is actually quite interesting. A lot of people with extra free transfers might be considering something like Isak to Watkins if it is the case that, let's say, Liverpool and Newcastle advance, because you can kind of avoid, I suppose, the need to even free out in 29 by just going for Watkins instead. Other points, I'll probably just only respond to kind of chip strategy related questions in this video. MD says he sold Allison to Pickford so he could use the assistant managership on slot, very likely Newcastle. Yeah, that's fair. And I think, once again, it just depends, right? Whether you have free transfers or not. Taking out Gakpo is insane. Well, one of the things too with Gakpo is you also need to kind of count that. I mean, Jota, we actually thought that Jota would not be coming back for anytime soon. But now it seems like Jota and Darwin have been in training. And so if you think about it, the second double, you might see more minutes from other players, which also means that that's a reduction on Gakpo's minutes overall. So I think that's quite significant in terms of a change in information from previous game weeks, where if I remember when we were at the game week 23 deadline, we basically thought that Jota wouldn't touch the double game week on 24 at all. Whereas now it seems like he can be involved in both the fixtures in double game week 24, which also means that he'll hopefully be involved in double game week 25 for Liverpool if that happens. Can everyone stop buying Kluivert? I don't own Kluivert, but I am probably going to be out of the Bruno and Odegaard business, so I will have enough money to do with whatever I want when it comes to all these managers or all these Bournemouth midfielders. Is pressure on Liverpool to keep winning? Yeah, but I think they've dealt with a tough schedule before, right? This is not the first time this season that Liverpool have dealt with tough fixtures. I remember, I'm a Real Madrid fan. I remember when they absolutely destroyed us amongst a really tough fixture schedule, when they were even facing games like Arsenal and actually got a draw from that, things like that. I mean, they've had fixture runs that are poor before, and I still think they've got a fair bit amount of depth, especially if Darwin and Jota are in training, which means that they have the attacking depth in place. You know, it's only I suppose the midfield right now that's struggling, but they've also been afforded the luxury of being able to rotate quite a fair bit within the Champions League, which I think that's really significant, to be fair. 71% chance only Aston Villa and Liverpool double in game week 25. Yeah, but that's extremely high, right? Can we have a peek of my team? Absolutely, I'll share my team in a moment. Algorithm actually projects higher points for me going with option 1. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that strategy makes a lot of sense, to be honest, if you've got the triple captain, to still consider triple captain 24, particularly for those, as I said, those who've actually used free transfers early this week might just want to go triple captain 24 and then actually, you know, reset by going for assistant manager 25, because you can't also guarantee that the future doubles will be as good as a Salah double, and that's pretty much what it comes down to. Is there a chance that double 36 gets moved to 33? I mean, some of the fixtures that we traditionally would have expected to land on 36 could be played on 33, but it's there's still going to be 2 doubles this season. This double 25 has messed up your whole chip strategy. Hey, same here, my friend. Here for FPL. Sorry that I couldn't react to this in real time, but thank you so much for the super chat. Gakpo to Wisa -4, assistant manager slot. Moyes would require -4 too. Well, one of the things to think about too is if you made a different free transfer within your team, I guess you could still be keeping triple Liverpool, right? Whereas if you actually go out from Gakpo to slot, you triple Liverpool there, but then maybe you also lose, I guess, technically another doubler. Whereas if you went for a -4 to Moyes, you'd still keep that triple Liverpool. So you're losing a doubler in theory. And then I suppose right then it actually depends on the gap between, let's say, the free transfer that will cost you when you don't have to go slot to slot. So one of the tricky things with going to slot now is, what if Liverpool actually do not win in the Carabao Cup match? That actually has a huge impact, because if you go slot now, then you'll actually be in a little bit more danger, I think, for the next week, where, okay, still, you've got Wolves at home, which is just an amazing game. But actually, you might still want to use a free transfer to go towards, I don't know, Marco Silva, who's going to have a major double. So I kind of like the idea of simply just going for Moyes still in that circumstance, because you are in that camp of player where you're taking hits to go into slot. And it's going to hurt the amount of doublers you have. Whereas a lot of other players might actually have the opportunity to still go to slot without actually taking a hit. And that actually is a lot more beneficial. So I would actually probably find a Moyes transfer, because I still think that the, using a free transfer next week on assistant manager is totally fine and fair play. But if you also think that Gakpo's minutes are really poor, right? If you suddenly think that, with Jota back in training, that Gakpo's minutes aren't going to be good on 25, then I can also kind of hear that out in terms of strategy. But you're also kind of betting that Liverpool will take that 71% chance and make that 100. Bold move for assistant managers, Moyes chasing the table bonus. I mean, absolutely it is. But I mean, there's also going to be games where, I mean, look at, I guess, how Leicester have been playing. Yes, of course, they got a result recently versus Tottenham, but for the most part, they've been a pretty poor team, and this is a really significant game for Everton, and they're at least at home. Sometimes just having a good game to be able to get a really good result on and get clean sheets is as significant, or can be even more important than table bonus. You think the whole point of AM is to predict against the odds? But I don't think that's how that works, right? Because the odds aren't just saying there's a 71% chance for, let's say, this manager to win, so therefore you need to go for this manager. So the 29% chance plus the table bonus is also calculated within the odds. Now, you obviously want to you basically just want to maximize the results, but it's yes, of course, we're looking at expected points projections based on odds. But odds work for both ways and for different results. You're kind of just hedging in terms of multiple, in specific scenarios that you want to benefit from. So when we see, for example, expected assistant manager points as an example, like where we look at 11FI's chip points, I mean, no manager is going to get 7.2 points, right? That's a simulation of multiple different occurrences happening and probabilities. So it's going to be a binary result. So you just basically want to put yourself in the best position of betting against certain things. For example, it's not within the odds that Everton beat Liverpool or get a draw within the Merseyside derby, but it's possible. And that's already factored into with some of the projections. So yes, I guess they're odds, but the odds look at both outcomes really and the probabilities of both. And sure, of course, I guess you're in the camp of purely looking for table bonus, but that's going to be pretty hard to do very consistently, right? Because there's not too many teams low in the table right now that I would trust to consistently overperform 3 games in a row. And yeah, fine. We have some teams like Tottenham and Man United who are a little bit lower down the table than we usually would expect. But it's also hard to believe that they'll actually pull out the performances that we want. And so I still think at the end of the day, these kind of expected chip points are very, very helpful in terms of making our decisions. And as you can see, both sides of the table are being reflected as having good points when the fixture makes sense, right? And Fulham versus Nottingham Forest is such a good example of a singular fixture where Fulham are probably still not expected to get a great result versus Nottingham Forest, but there's a good chance that they do. And that enough is going to drive a lot of the table bonus expectations. Nil says, hi, what are your thoughts on going Moyes if you already have triple Liverpool? Yeah, I think I've explained that. Luke in the chat says, but Moyes needs to win or draw, which everyone considering... I'm not sure what your point is, though. But I mean, you can still get a lot of points from just simply the Leicester game. I think that's actually what the crucial thing is. The same way I could kind of explain that it's very unlikely for Liverpool to completely batter Bournemouth and Everton away from home, because both of these two teams have been very strong on defense all season long. Bournemouth, to their credit, have actually also been an extremely competent attacking team. I mean, they're one of the best attacks that we have in the league. So Liverpool being away for both games, you know, is not great for the chances, but it's still a Liverpool double, and Liverpool are still Liverpool. So yeah, I think that's factored into with Everton, and it's still an opportunity to double. You'll never find later this season an opportunity to double with the assistant manager, which I think that's quite significant. You could also mention though that, hey, we're looking at Moyes now. He's 12.4 and 24, but then actually on the single, you can see a team like Arsenal is 9.6. So only less than 3 expected points behind a doubling team. But, you know, just like, for example, doubles are naturally within FPL, appearance points, etc. Those kind of things matter. It's also a good chance to kind of bet again, right? Liverpool will not win both games this week. Bournemouth will probably beat them. I mean, hard to say that. I think that's still a pretty big bet to say that Bournemouth will beat them, but it's very possible. Yeah, Liverpool are rested for this Bournemouth match tomorrow, in much the same way that Bournemouth are rested for this match as well. So it works both ways. Why to use the assistant manager now instead of later double game weeks? I mean, the points difference is that you have 2 doubles. You've got a double in 24 and you've got a double in 25. Later in the season, it's very unlikely that you'll actually have a double. I think that's not even going to happen, frankly, unless, you know, more sort of exceptional circumstances happen, like weather events, etc. Fran, would you say the triple captain? If you don't like the triple captain because you don't like the fixtures, I think you can definitely just go for assistant manager and you can triple captain later. I think that's totally fine. But I think it's super viable to triple captain 24 and assistant manager 25, which is what I've suggested earlier in the stream. My plan is actually to take a hit and to go Moyes, and that's my plan. So that's it really for the chip strategy video. Kind of think I've iterated most of my thoughts on here. I'll also share my team, but here for FPL says he's really torn. He could do Gakpo to NDIA and have the same amount of doublers. Not really keen on Moyes as an assistant manager. Don't have a triple captain though. Well, I mean, Gakpo to NDIA is quite a strong move. But then one of the pros of, but my logic there with Gakpo though is that Gakpo will still double next week, right? So if you go for slot next week, you'll have slot and triple Liverpool. But the alternative would be you actually have Gakpo with a double next week as well if Liverpool actually do progress. And you still have the chance of moving Moyes on to another doubling manager, which would not be possible, for example, in the reverse situation. So I think it's a very close call, to be honest, as to whether you go Gakpo to NDI. And I think that is more a question looking back at how you'd evaluate Gakpo's minutes, and use that as a basis of your judgment for how to move on to using slot instead of, let's say, just simply going for Moyes. We're not going to do is spam the chat. Moyes requires 2 transfers because you have to transfer him out. I mean, Moyes requires 2 transfers. No, because you're only going to transfer him out once. But I get your point. However, there's also a probability that Slot doesn't actually win versus Tottenham, and therefore you also have to use 2 free transfers on Slot. So there's quite a big element to that too. And I think ultimately one of the points to make is that Moyes is just he's not a bad option this week. You know, he's got one really good fixture and he's got one really tough fixture, but at least that's at home and you give him a small chance, and you can turn a small chance into something quite major with the table bonus being involved. Moyes is a football genius. He better be a football genius, because I'm down bad and I need Moyes to cook me a meal. In FPL, I'll be completely honest. I am absolutely desperately in need for Moyes to save my season. Just begging for it, really. Yeah, I mean, we could kind of have a look at my team now. It's in an absolutely destitute place right now. So my face is like in the complete wrong spot. Of course it is, but you know, let's move that because we've got technology here. Okay. This is what my team looks like. I don't know what's going on with my stream. Oh, I'm actually using the wrong stream graphic, but that's fine. We're doing this on the fly, so what can you do? This is basically my team right now. I've taken a hit. Sorry to say, or sorry it happened. I don't know. Did Odegaard to Mbumo for a hit. I'm probably going to take another hit next week. I don't even care anymore. So we have triple Liverpool. We have Mbumo in place for this game. I mean, one of the things I was considering was, you know, I could have gone Odegaard to Dango Ouattara or Odegaard to Kluivert and just simply went for a move which kind of secures me for the next week and sort of reduces the need for a hit. But ultimately, I was going to make a free transfer anyways to get towards Moyes as my assistant manager. So I went for Mbumo instead. It's still Tottenham at home. I would like a piece of that pie. And yeah, it's not gone quite well. And I think it just goes back down to those Allison and DCL transfers. But it's a strong team for now. And I'm pretty happy about it. And then next week, I think the plan is, because I'm so tight in terms of budget. Like I've got 0.0 in the bank. You know, lovely, of course, whenever that happens in FPL. But the plan is probably actually just to go Bruno out into another Bournemouth midfielder. And then I would actually like to go Dango, personally. It could just be Kluivert. We'll see what happens. But yeah, the plan, generally speaking, is to go Dango because that gives me enough money to kind of move Moyes on as well. I'll take a hit for either Silva or Emery. And then after that, I don't have any transfers to make up until Gaming 27. Because previously, I suppose if I was going to roll my transfers anyways, I would have just gone, let's say, Dango and Gaming 26, because maybe Rodgers would be on the double, and then I don't even have to make a move there. But now I'm planning to just keep Rodgers if he doubles, and then go Bruno out into Dango. And then actually, NDI will eventually become someone like Jackson in the future. So that's kind of the rough plan that I have within my team. So whenever Jackson has good fixtures, which is going to be 27 onwards, I'll move NDI to Jackson, and that's kind of the team template that I have set for myself. And obviously the assistant manager money will come back to me then anyways on 27. So I'll actually have a little bit more money in the bank to potentially make another move. That could just simply be moving Rodgers on anyways, or who knows. We'll see what happens as well. But we'll probably have 2 free transfers then to kind of manage the team. It's also possible that I think I just simply, you know, I could see myself going for Emery on 25 and then actually just not using a transfer on Emery on 26. But I could also just simply, if I'm planning to roll in terms of my starting 11 for 26, then I can just actually use a free transfer for Emery to move him into, let's say, Arteta, because I still only have, you know, 1 Arsenal right now within this team structure. So that's kind of the plan. Yes, of course, a lot of hits are involved, but hey, that's what happens when team planning goes absolutely in the mud. And credit to people who've held on to their free transfers, because you're in a much better spot than myself, and congrats. Bobby says he's only got 0.3, 0.2 short of Moyes. Fran, you'll see here. What is the plan for 29? Yeah, I'm actually planning on free at 29 right now. I think that's generally the idea. This is hit season, absolutely. But we just have to see what happens with the Carabao Cup. Looks like Bournemouth are looking for a striker on loan. Well, that's the thing. The thing is, the transfer window will actually close after Gaming 24, but also before the 25 deadline. So the reason also why I went for the Mbumo transfer this week and not the Odegaard to Dango transfer is because, you know, in the crazy small percentage case that somehow Bournemouth go for another striker, which suddenly pushes Dango to the left wing position, it probably makes sense for me to own Mbumo instead and then take a hit for the perfect Bournemouth midfielder in my team structure. And we'll find out anyways, because the transfer window, as I said, on 25 will be closed. And yeah, 25 is the best entry point. Yala says, hi Fran, thoughts on triple captain Salah versus system manager? I kind of made my thoughts a little bit earlier. I think it's actually very viable to keep your triple captain on Salah. But I think if you've got free transfers, if you've got money in the bank, this is still very simply an assistant manager play, I would think. That's kind of it in terms of the stream though, guys. I will be streaming tomorrow morning on the deadline. I thank you guys so much for joining me on the stream here today. Really appreciate it. But I've already given my recap for the next 3 weeks, Arconos, so you can just, you know, play back a little bit. But thank you guys so much. Apologies about the small mishap with one of the graphics there. I will also remind people that Ben Krellin has launched his full fixture calendar, I believe, on Twitter again, so you can have a look at that for all your eyes to see. But good luck to you guys out there, whether you're assistant managering, whether you're triple captaining, whether you're pretending like GW25 isn't going to happen, or whatever you're doing for this weekend. So yeah, take care. See you guys soon.